Good evening, everyone. Welcome this evening. I know it's been a very busy time. Just want to check before we start. We're all here for the grade 8 parents' evening. Because if you're had something else more exciting planned, then you can leave now. So just to say, our theatre doesn't always look like this, although I think you've probably only seen it looking like this. For COVID, we actually put a platform here. And so we use this as a classroom. We were obviously short of big venues. Those chairs stayed, but we made a platform, and this actually became a classroom. And so only recently we tried to put the chairs back and realized that some of them are very tired after a year and a half being in storage, and so hence what we have here. Anyway, on that anecdotal note, I'd like to welcome you and introduce myself. My name is Michelle van Skalkwyk. I'm head of academics at the college, and I have my esteemed colleagues with me. I have Marilyn Harrod on the left here, who is from the BSU, and she'll talk for a bit. She's an ed psych, and she will introduce herself and the work she does. And then we have Mr. Michael Bamvadelis, who's HOD of Maths. And the reason he's here this evening is actually just to chat around some of the concerns around maths and how we run things here. So we are here tonight to inform you on a number of matters, but also for you to see the heart of myself and my colleagues, so that if you or your son needs support on anything, I hope you'll feel like we've broken the ice and you're happy to contact us. There's a long road ahead, and I like to think that we are approachable, and certainly I'm always on the end of an email. I get criticized a lot for that by my family, but I do think it's important if you need to know something, often you're anxious around something, I hope that you will contact me and my colleagues. So this is just some light relief to set the scene and contextualize in a frivolous way where we as parents find ourselves sometimes with our sons at this age. Or perhaps this suits you better. What I didn't mention, and what you might find relevant, is I too have 2 boys, and I've had a son that's gone through grade 8 not so long ago, and Mrs. Harrod Marilyn's had the same. So we know that it's a difficult age for them emotionally, and we know that from one minute to the next we don't really know what we're dealing with. So it's difficult for them, and it ends up being difficult for us. And I won't say us mothers in particular, because I think everybody feels it, but sometimes it's a very difficult stage for us in the stage they're in, not only in their adolescent stage, but they have to start a new school in the middle of that, and then to add to it, they've just been through and are going through a pandemic. So it is accentuated some of the stresses and strains that they have. So you and your sons would have made it through, well, you're here, for the first few weeks, and I hope it's gone well so far. We're acutely aware that it's a great adjustment for them, lots of new stimuli, lots of people, new procedures, and your son has probably been very excited and stimulated, but also exhausted and overwhelmed and anxious. I know my child felt like that, and you probably wonder if it's just your child, and how they're going to manage. To be honest, it's a particularly frenetic start of term here at Bishop's. My background is I was taught in a state school, Berkeley High, for 10 years, and I was at Herschel for 18 years, and I've only been here for about 3.5 years. With the start of all these heats, the Heats Week and the running and all the various other things, in the camp last week and the new parents' evening, so it's a particularly busy start. It's not always like this. So I just want to assure you of that, because you're wondering how long they can continue this for, and let alone you. We all want the same for our children, making sure that your child settles into high school, makes friends, establishes good work habits, doesn't get behind in their maths, doesn't get into the wrong crowd, participates in lots of activities, behaves himself, and we as parents worry about them. And I'm saying to you this evening that we're very happy to partner with you in growing these young boys into good men. And you will have heard that statement quite a lot already. We're all about growing our boys into good men. And now that they're here, they're ours. And we will work with you on that path. So I'm hoping tonight will quell any worries you have. And certainly feel free to contact myself or my colleagues after the event by email. I'll get back to you soon so that we can chat through things that you're concerned about. We're not just teachers, we've been parents too. We know the feeling. Just an overview for the evening. Couple of things, as you can see on the list. I'll do most of the talking, but there will be some light relief in the form of Marilyn and Michael. We are trying to record the session. As you will notice, we are very much wanting to be back physical with everything, in as much as COVID allows us to do that. But obviously some people are not able to be here in terms of being not actually in the country and that. So we are recording it, but it's certainly not a live streaming or anything like that. At the end, I'd like you to ask questions if you would like to, or if you don't think of anything afterwards, you can contact me. I'll also put this PowerPoint on our page, and so then you can see if anything, you want to look at anything. So first of all, our academic vision. Our aim is to empower our pupils to take their place in the global world that they enter and be positive participants in the shaping of that world. They will be self-motivated individuals who pursue excellence and engage with people and communities in a sophisticated way, and who approach situations knowledgeably, imaginatively, and sensitively. Our HODs came up with that and sort of fashioned it or crafted it over a few years. I don't want to look at all the points because many of them are self-explanatory and idealistic, but what I do want to talk about, and that will be the focus of my talk for the evening. Do come in, please. Show that poor person, no one's going to look at them. So I want to talk about what empower means. Us adults will know what that means, but I want to speak particularly about it to say it specifically means to make someone stronger, more confident in controlling their life and claiming their rights. And that's what I want to focus my talk on this evening and show you how we've organized our academic program to fulfill this. So the practical framework around how we start to empower our boys is centered around them being able to work independently and to be accountable and responsible for their own progress or demise in the academic sphere. To this end, as you know, Bishop requires boys to have their own laptop from the start of the year. We didn't used to do that. That's been something subsequent to COVID. We used to say, let the boys spend 6 months without a laptop, and then. But we've actually found that it's actually helpful to have it right from the beginning, and especially when obviously, with COVID, it was a necessity. So the boys' laptops have been configured according to the bishop's specifications, and you will know there were very strict criteria around having a bishop's laptop for a particular reason. And they've had training in small groups so that they can use their device efficiently. Please sit anywhere. Those chairs are a little bit rocky, I have warned you. Okay, those are the ones that didn't put the screws in yet, I found out. So we also have a help desk, and that's one of the reasons why everyone had to have the same laptop. We have a help desk that boys can go and hand their laptop in when it's not working, get a new one, start working straight away. So you notice we make sure, we know our customers, we make sure that there's no excuse. Your laptop's broken, don't worry, my boy, go and get another one. And so that's what we do. You can't see so well, but on our laptops we have an intranet. And the laptops aid the boys in becoming independent learners because we have this intranet where each subject has a page. And I'd like to outline the thinking around this, although you can't see the detail, so that you know what's available to your boy. First of all, on the very left-hand side here, well, they're not organized, they don't all have to be the same, but they've got the same basic information on them. First of all, we have the framework for each subject. In other words, what they need to know. And second of all, I think it's in the middle of this column here, or on one of the columns, is how will they know when they've arrived? In other words, how will they know that they are upskilled in a particular area? And so there are what they are assessments and that kind of thing for them to be able to assess, do I know my stuff? Have I picked up the necessary skills? And then thirdly, of course, there's a whole lot of resources to support that. So how will I get to the points? What do I need to know? This is how the end point, how do I know I've arrived? And give me some resources to do that. They're extremely detailed, and they're a work of I'll say a work of art. They are a work of art, and they're the work of the creatorship of a whole lot of staff over a whole lot of years, in terms of getting the information best to suit the boys. So our hope eventually is, and that we are actually there with many of the pages, is that if the boy was absent, they could actually help themselves. Everything is there for them. We call it a one-stop shop. In other words, we don't want the situation where your son is, and you might have experienced this from a primary school situation or prep school, where the one teacher's sending the work on WhatsApp and the other one's sending it on email and the other one's sending it on Teams. So none of that happens here. Everything, all resources, everything to do with their subject is on the intranet. So it's not like, oh, what did the teachers have to learn? And then you have to go look for the email. So we don't operate like that at all. I follow that up very strictly with staff who, if they send emails, it's too much for the boys. Also don't want them on the email all the time and that kind of thing. So if they need any information about a particular subject, what's being tested, etc., it is all on the intranet. And so that's the one-stop shop. Just having mentioned Teams, we do use Teams. But we use Teams where a teacher wants to communicate with the boys. So we're talking about a teacher wanting to share a lesson or have a message a boy. Hi, Johnny, how's it going with, you haven't handed your work in. So we use Teams as a way of communicating with boys, and we don't prefer WhatsApp at all, but all information about the subject will be on the internet. Interestingly, in addition, in an educational setting, empowering used to be about teaching content. How much do you know? Whereas in the modern setting, there's so much information and data out there, we actually got to teach the boys how to prevent themselves from drowning in all this information. And obviously being discerning users of that data. So we see it as a big part of our work, is to help them navigate what is a sensory and intellectual overload information. So our program over the years will include a process of intentionally teaching of information management and research skills to help our boys become discerning, analytical consumers of information, so they can be informed and ethical, sound decision makers in the midst of a deluge of information. And we specifically knowing many of them go and study in a tertiary institution, and these skills are essential. And so I'll talk a little bit later about exactly how that looks. We, in essence, are interested in educating as compared to certificating. Educating make intellectually aware, enlightened, discerning, discriminating, open-minded, good reasoning, cognitive competencies like reasoning and applying knowledge. That is what we focus on. All idealistic, but I would like to, hopefully by the time I finish speaking, you'll see that we've got intentional, practical things in place to ensure that. Many of you will obviously have heard of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Essentially, we have advanced technologically in such a way that employers in certain jobs can be replaced by robots. And we will find that we're actually preparing our boys for jobs that don't actually exist at the moment. And so what we say to ourselves is how do we prepare them for jobs that don't exist? And so we need to teach core competencies. This always appeals to me. We need to identify and emphasize that which differentiates us from robots and accentuates us, which makes us human. So to prepare our boys for a landscape where we don't really know what it's going to look like because the jobs aren't even developed yet, we are interested in obviously teaching critical competencies. They are also called 21st century skills. I want to just stop for a moment and ask you to reflect on your own son. I know I've thought about my own child with this as well. And look at these critical competencies. These are the competencies that will be necessary for our boys to succeed in the workplace out there. And so it's quite interesting, they're young, so we're not expecting them to have mastered many of these yet, but this is where we're heading for. And what was fascinating for me during the COVID time was that you found that boys who managed, not all, but boys who managed very well with the remote teaching, some of them indicated that they've mastered some of these basic skills. I mean, think of self-regulation. I mean, the teacher's teaching on the screen, and there's a ball sitting there. Am I going to sit and put my screen on my photo on there, and I'm going to play the ball, I'm going to keep working. Or self-initialization, or some of the other ones, so, not empathy so much, grit, adaptability, agility, and those kind of things, initiative, curiosity, and imagination. So we want to intentionally focus on covering these core skills so we can prepare our boys for the exciting but yet uncertain future. We've got various initiatives that we've put in place, like project-based learning, which encourages curiosity-based learning. In other words, your curiosity and your questions direct your learning in a controlled environment, so make sure that you don't get so curious that you actually don't do anything that you're supposed to and you've gone that way. So this is the kind of thing we're looking at. So then the other thing I wanted to say to you is, how can you be, as a parent, feel involved in your son's academic journey? And so you would have heard about My Bishop's Life. I think this thing works. Just murmur or something while I'm doing this. Okay, so you received an email not long ago from the IT department that had something like this on it, and it gives you the steps to joining up to My Bishop's Life. So just if you can go and look for that email, so that you can join My Bishop's Life. And the point then is that you can be involved in your boy's journey, and I can show you exactly what you can find there. So that's what My Bishop's Life looks like. You can log in and then you can actually help them. Not help them, you can actually have an eye on it. Because that's the problem. Got to high school now, they're wanting to be independent. They're wanting to find their own tribe, is what the kind of terminology we use. They're looking to move with their own people. But then they are until they fall off the wagon, or they've become overwhelmed, and then they need you again. But you never know when that is, because they're mostly holding you like this. And then they come a little bit close, you come a little bit closer, and they say, no, go away. But then the next minute you need to help them. So it's quite nice to be able to have an overview of your son's profile that you can look at on the side, and just to know sort of what's coming and how to help. And so what we see here is there's a profile of one of our ex-pupils. I don't want to put anyone up who was here. And you will notice I don't know how many people are already on here. Some of you, not everybody. So you can see there's a whole lot of detail there. This is their profile per se. You'll notice there's tabs along the top here. And so I'll show you a little bit about what's in those tabs. You can see their marks, you can see their reports, you can see the academic planner. So you know when those tests are, and I'll show you what I mean now. We have what we call a rolling average. So the rolling average means that every time a test result or assessment gets put onto the child's profile, you're able to see it. So it's changing all the time, and that's what I would like to urge you about. It is changing all the time, and different things are weighted differently. So where a child has a 40%, I suggest you don't become distressed by it, because it could be a tiny thing, but all the marks are there. So you can see there's the different things they've done, and there are the marks that they've got. We're able to put comments on there. There's the weighting change throughout the year. It's always visible. So the rolling average is under academic here. So you go here. Is this academic? Can't see well. The academic there. It says marks. So you can go into marks, or you can go into the next part, which is the academic planner. You will notice here things are in different colors, and the different colors are depending on what kind of assessment they are. So you can see it's a test, or it's a worksheet, or it's a whatever. So you can easily look at that, all under academic. So it will say there's academic planner, there's the marks we just saw. The next part is reports, and I want to talk a little bit about our reporting. It's a little bit different than perhaps other places. So what we have here in front of me is what we call an industry report. Industry meaning how well the boy is working. You will see that there are marks here. This is done in the first and the third term, okay? So there are marks on my rolling average, and you will see the grade average. We like to put that in there. Some schools don't. There's the teacher's name. Teacher can put a comment on the side there, and you'll also notice that their industry is on the side there. So we've got a couple of categories. We've got excellent, we've got very good, we've got adequate, and we've got cause for concern. And I say to the staff, if you're going to put cause for concern, you don't just have cause for concern, you need a comment. And I will make sure that they are, so that you've got some feedback. And so that's our industry report. I must emphasize, so you'll get one this term, not on the last day of term. You'll see it on the calendar. It's about a few days before the end of term, I think. And it'll be published then. And it's a snapshot in time. So it's on that particular day. I'll take a snapshot and you as parents will see that. And it's quite informative. And when I talk about this very good and all this kind of thing on the side here, the very good, it's explained on there, but the very good is really in terms of the child's working class. So that he might have 60%, and you think, well, that's dreadful, but the teachers will say very good, because in that case, they're actually working really hard. So it's about their industry, how they're working in the class. Okay. And then second of all, we've got our other reports. We've got June and December reports. So that's the industry report. We've got June and December reports. You'll find at Bishops, it is one of the things where we're a little bit different. We have a lot of commentary on the report. So even that IR, which is a one-pager that you'll get in this term and the third term, there will be a short tutor comment and the house director comment, even this term. In June and December, we have subject comments. In June, especially subject comments, tutor comments, and house director comments. So the report could be as long as 8 pages. There's a lot of detail for you to have a look at. In December, it's not always that useful to have teacher comments because they're moving on to a new year and a new thing in grade 8, that is. Further up the school, we do subject comments. But every term there's commentary for you to have a look at. Hopefully you won't need this. But just the past requirements, and I want to let you know this. There's 11 subjects that these children are doing, but to pass grade 8, you do need English of 50%, which for many is fine, but for some, English might be their weak thing. So it's English 50, Afrikaans 40, and mathematics 40. So those are set requirements, and then there's a whole lot of other requirements around other subjects, but it's a bit more flexible. But these ones are sometimes ones where Afrikaans is a problem or else maths is a problem. And Mr. Van will talk about this as well. Interestingly, in our marks, we include all the work for the year. It's called school-based assessment. In other words, every single assessment that the boys do gets included. So everything's important. Okay. Let me just move along here. Seems to be stuck a little bit. No, there we go. Okay. So just high school habits, and then we'll get on to the others. You would have heard this on, and we know it. They need to get involved and out of their comfort zone, and it's lovely, and not all our children want to do that, and they're also at that time of their life where they're shy. Maybe their skin isn't as good as they'd like it to be. There's all sorts of insecurities. So they just must do the best they can to get involved. And I think all we want is happy children. So if they're not doing all the activities that you would like them to do, or they're really good, my son really good at a whole lot of sports and he didn't want to do them. So at the end of the day, we want happy people. So I think you've got to just manage that and get your boy to feel comfortable here. The independence part, I've mentioned it already. We need to help them empower themselves. And the way we can do that is we have a support timetable in most of our subjects. In fact, there's a plan on the intranet where the boy can see exactly where all the support classes are. We've got math support every day of the week except for Friday. And we've got it at open period and after school. So you can support your child by saying to them, go to the support desk. I want to know that you went to the support desk. And you can even ask the head of maths, Mike here. We keep a record of that kind of thing. They must help themselves before you need to start doing extra lessons and that kind of thing. You're paying a lot of fees, and so they should get the help here at school. So the independence, we want as part of empowering them. We suggest no extra lessons. There are obviously exceptions to that rule. You mean each child's individual. And then the other thing I want to say is you don't actually have access to the intranet. You know those subject pages I mentioned? You don't have access to that. And the reason is it's for them to use. It's their job to know what's on offer and to use it. I like to think of it as that when I was young, and I'm really old, we used to run the neighborhood, and I'm sure you did too. There wasn't cell phones and that kind of thing. Yes, I'm really old. We used to have the independence of roaming the neighborhood and found our independence spirit like that. Nowadays, we're not able to do that. So I kind of like to think that here at school, we provide some sort of environment where they can be independent in a safe environment. So we don't end up with a situation that they get to university and we as parents are still contacting the lecturer to tell them X, Y, Z, and they have this learned helplessness. So when you start at high school, it's a safe environment and trying to help them to stand on their own feet and in a place where they're actually cared for and helped. They need sleep. They will tell you they don't. They need sleep, need 9 hours of sleep. And you've heard Tony go on about it, and I agree with it, and I can't profess to have done it very well myself with my own children, but that cell phone is the problem. I mean, we all know that. So that's 9 hours of sleep is going to help them to cope. And then they need organizational skills. I've left that one out. The self-advocacy, representing themselves. So they need to look on the internet themselves. If they've got a problem, or they're struggling with maths, or they're struggling with a subject, or they're unhappy about something, they need to speak up for themselves. And yes, they're shy and they're awkward, some of them, because they're at that age. So your job will be to say, come on, just go and ask, or which teacher do you feel comfortable with? And try and get them to stand up for themselves. Such valuable skills or life lessons. And then the organizational skills, macro planner, to manage that lot, that executive functioning, that the BSU has a lot to do with as well for boys who struggle. That's important too. It's that first part of organizing yourself. And many of them, I mean, I got kids and boys in grade 11 in my class, and they don't need a diary, they're just going to remember everything. And I want to say, that's not working so well for you. I don't say anything, but we all need a diary and a way of, so I must admit it's an interesting thing, and I'm being anecdotal, but for some reason after 30 years this year I decided this is my thing. I bring my file to my classroom and I say to the boys, how's the filing going? Because the grade 11s use a file. And I said, how's the filing going? And they said, fine, ma'am, and everything's hanging out like this. So I said, well, the way I've organized my file and trying to just get them to realize that they see me as really organized, and yet I need a file, and I've got my little dividers, and and they've got all grand ideas, and we just support them through that to try and organize themselves, because otherwise this paper just disappears. But anyway, I've spoken about high school habits and organizational skills and all those good things. But what happens if they're feeling overwhelmed and can't get organized? And that could well be many of them at some stage, or maybe even now. So Marilyn Harrod, who's our Ed Psych, and she's part of the BSU, and we'll chat for a bit about that. And then thereafter, Mr. Van Vadelis will come and chat about the anxiety that math sometimes provokes or evokes. And then I'll just finish off after that. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm sure you've been into the courtyard near Ogilvy and seen our offices. That's the Bishop Support Unit. If you haven't seen it, we've got an open door policy, and please feel free to pop in. I'd ask you not to be like the boys. So some of the boys actually circle the courtyard outside our unit. Please just come in the door. At the BSU, there are 2 psychologists, myself being one of them. I'm an educational psychologist. And we have Peter Farlam, who's the head of our unit, because those of you that have come up from the Bishop's Prep know that we have an educational psychologist in our pre-prep, one in our prep, and obviously I'm in the college. Peter Farlam is a clinical psychologist, and I'll just explain the difference between Peter and myself and what the roles are. I know often parents say to me, you can't really split academic and emotional, which is true. Yet we do have different veins that our focuses lie, me being an educational psychologist and Peter being a clinical psychologist. This year in the BSU, we have Nikki Lewis. She's our new BSU administrator. So often when you phone us at the unit, your first point of call will be Nikki. Nikki's a wealth of information. So some of the small day-to-day sort of things that you want to ask, Nikki is the person to ask those questions. Because obviously Peter and I are not always available to take those calls, but Nikki is there. For those of you that don't know, our BSU is an accredited HPCSA training site. So under my supervision, we do have 2 intern psychologists that do their practical year with us. This year we have 3. Yushra will be finishing in March, but Nathira and Izala are here for the year. They assist me in terms of doing the one-to-one follow-up with the boys and that, and they are a real help. When we talk about the assessments that go through the BSU, they are the people that do those assessments under my supervision. I'm just going to go through the staff in the BSU and then I'll explain the different roles. Angela Ledridge is the learning support teacher. She's private. So she does do, for those of you that have come up with boys having learning support in the primary school, Angela does a similar thing, but remember in the college it's much more supportive in terms of strategies. In the younger years, you're more supporting trying to get those basic skills of reading and writing consolidated. Obviously now in the college, you're hoping those reading and writing skills are consolidated. And now what you're looking to do is explore and develop the academic language that comes with the college. We have exciting new venture that I'm going to explain to you. For those of you that have got older siblings in the college, you might have come across Bev Morris. Bev Morris retired as the LO head last year, and she has come under the BSU wing this year and is developing a career center at our unit, which we are super excited about. So just explaining the 2 different roles of what Peter does versus myself. You can see Peter focuses more on the emotional side, and those are some of the areas that he touches base with. He also does a lot of the concussion testing. So I know rugby season is rapidly approaching, and I know that is a concern for parents. So what we do, and those of you that have come up from the prep, and I'm sure many of the primary schools do get a baseline. It's very important if your son is playing rugby or hockey to do that baseline assessment, because if he does, for some reason, we hope he doesn't get a concussion, we are then able to look at the baseline and then give you some guidance as to how to proceed from there. So I'm not going to go through all those things. You can read them there. But Peter Farlam can be reached on pfarlam@bishops.org.za, or as you know, the BSU number is 1010 with a 659 in there. And if you want to speak to him, Nikki will make an appointment. So the academic side is always an interesting discussion, because I think a lot of the parents coming up from the prep, and especially from wet pups, have a certain idea of what is expected about the academic support coordinator in the particular role at the BSU. So I think it's quite important for me to explain the function of what I do in the BSU and how it works. If you can see there, we do the assessments in the unit, and often your boys have come up through the primary school with concessions. So sometimes we have to do a reassessment. We often have to log those assessments with the WCED for the concessions to be put in place. Our internal system is loaded with those concessions, and the teachers are informed about it. We're on a new system called iSAMS, and it's a wonderful system. I've just shown the teachers how to access the information on the concessions, so the teachers are able to now type into our system, get their particular set and the concessions. We're really excited about the concessions in the test situation. We are starting to implement extra time. I know it's a work in progress, especially for our 10, 11s and 12s, the extra time is in, and the 8s and 9s we are starting to look at. I think the concessions are developing. I think it is quite hard for parents coming through from the primary school and prep when the college is not able to offer the accommodations that perhaps the primary schools were able to. The accommodations are in place for the formal exams, the June and December exams, because they're much easier to implement, and we will walk you through that process of extra time if your child has a computer concession, any of those. We touch base with the boys, we get them feeling comfortable about the concessions. As I was saying earlier on, we do a career assessments, and we have introduced subject choice assessments in grade 9 as well. I just want to reiterate here that in our LO subject, these two particular areas are done in depth in grade 9 in the second term, and then in grade 11 in the third term. So please be reassured that these assessments that we offer, especially the career and the grade 9 subject choice assessments, are really just a consolidation of what has been done in the LO time. Sometimes what happens is the boys are still needing a little bit more support, and that's where these assessments take place. We often find the boys in grade 9 have a vague idea, and they sort of head off in the line of maybe commerce to come to grade 11, and things have slightly shifted. So these are just tools to help them find the correct path. And I think today, if you see the trend, sometimes a child will do an undergrad and then change careers. So some parents think, well, now what, I've paid all that money for a career assessment. He did a BCom and now he's gone and done veterinary science. But we do know that that does happen. So that's why I'm quite excited about this career centre that we're starting to develop. There's been a need for it, and Bev, who has a wealth of knowledge and has been involved in this for many, many years, is offering this service during open period to the boys, and it's actually been amazing in the last 3 weeks, the amount of foot trade she's had through the centre. So if you would like to come and view it, there's a lot of information. If you come into our unit is a double story. You'll find Peter and I upstairs, you'll find the interns downstairs, and you'll find the new career centre downstairs as well. There's a lot of information. We are hoping to develop it. We're hoping to develop our portal with it being online as well. So very exciting things like that. I just want to explain the tutoring. I think that's a conversation that we often have. A lot of parents expect the BSU to do individual tutoring. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen at the BSU, but what I can explain to you how we do is we start a system. So Michelle was talking about executive functioning, and I'm sure Michelle used that example of the boys saying, no, I've got it, it's all in my brain. I think that's a conversation I've had with many boys. No, we sorted, we can remember. And so one of the things that we do develop with the boys at the unit is this executive functioning. It is a skill that we develop with boys. Girls seem to have it slightly stronger in their teenage years, but the boys do catch up. But it is an ongoing thing where we've got to help the boys plan. Often I've said to boys in the last 3 weeks, do you have anything, diary? No, why would I need that? And I've said to them, because the amount of information that's coming through, you need to put it somewhere. And I know a lot of you, this is such a controversial tool. So you'll often hear me say that I say to the boys, use it as a tool to help you, not hinder you. And I always encourage the boys to use Outlook, because that's where they find the emails, but to also use the diary, because it's so wonderful that you can put the notifications on and it rings in your pocket. And I've often said to boys, 99% of you will lose that paper diary, but 99% of you very seldom lose your phone. And they laugh, they agree. So I think what we're trying to encourage boys, as much as there are the dangers around this device, it's a wonderful device to help with executive functioning. And I always say to the parents, once you reach college years, it's helpful to stay on the bicycle but not pedal. And the one way is to encourage them to show you how they're organizing and planning. And then you actually really know if they are organizing and planning. And the chances are it's very thin. So that's one of the skills that we do develop with the boys. We do offer study skills. So for our lower grades, the 8s and 9s, we do a more generalized study skills. They have some vague idea from primary school. They remember that the teachers were talking about study skills and a couple of things. So what we try and do is look at them, look at it overall. So what is your learning style? How are you making notes? What are you doing? Are you managing the different platforms? Because I think if the grade 8s feel comfortable about the platforms they're managing, it then transpires into other areas. With our older group, 10, 11, and 12, we go more specific because by that stage they've got some system. It might not be a foolproof system, but they have a system. And so what we like to do is work with that system and adjust that system, not to change their system. So those are the things that we do offer. We will follow up with the boys, and I'm doing a lot of encouraging with our tutor system at the moment, which is very exciting. So often the boys come and see myself or the interns, and we start a process. So we'll start the planning, we'll start the organizing. Sometimes they get unstuck, and then they will come back to us. But what we're needing is a triangle. And often parents think, I'm out of here, they're in high school, I don't need to worry about the executive functioning. Unfortunately, I have to invite you back into that space. But it's how you do it that counts. And I say to parents, ask them to show it to you, not you do it for them. I know as a mum, I'd say in primary school, okay, what, and I'd list for my son, and he'd go, cool, I'm done, my mum's got it waxed. Come to high school, then he goes, don't do that for me anymore, and then the wheels come off. So what we put in place is, well, what are you actually doing? What's your plan? Tell me, and then I'm able to step out of your space. And I find if you say to them, how would you like mom to get off your back, or if it's dad in that case, they will give you a heads up and say, okay, well, stop nagging me. Moms, we like to nag. We come, have you done this? Why you not doing it? Okay. So one of the things is to say to them, okay, show me what you're doing. And that encourages that independence Michelle also talks about, because that's what you want to do, is them to come to you and say, Mum, yeah, I've got it, this is what I'm doing. Won't that be amazing, eh? Then we could all just go home, eh? So I think it's quite important, and I've done a lot of work with boys in terms of the parents doing that type of supportive work, and the tutors actually coming on board just to check in on a Monday morning. So what's actually happening in your week? The boys forget their weeks are busy. Now with sport, they get home sometimes 6. The last thing they want to do is do homework and plan and organize. So use your other days that you aren't so busy and give yourself that flexibility. But if you have no idea in your head what your week looks like, you're certainly not going to do that. So that's some of the things that we do. So if you're looking at the individual tutoring for specific subjects, that's where we encourage you to ask your boy to go to the support sessions during open period. The teachers are all available. Maths, amazing, because they're every day and after school. So there's no excuse. Your boy says, no, he never knows anything about math support. And I do know they love table tennis in the first term. I say to them, cool, table tennis for the first term, but then choose a day, one table tennis, and go to math support or some of the others. Science support is also on a Tuesday and a Thursday. The other subjects, the teachers like the boys to take the ownership, and you're going to find your grade 8 boys are not going to do that this term. So you'll have to encourage them. Go and ask your teacher. One of the things I do say to the boys is the teachers find it really hard when they arrive. I'm here. And the teachers say, well, what do you need help with? No, I just need help with everything. So actually they're not really sure what they're actually needing help with. So that's where they need to plan and go and see, okay, I didn't do so well in this subject, and that's actually what I need with support. And the maths teachers say to them, well, I can't help you if I don't know what you don't know. And so I think it's encouraging them to actually know what they don't know and go there for that support. So there is support. Going to an individual tutor, that comes where this support that's offered at the school is not enough and your boy's really struggling. And that's a different thing, and we do. The boys that come through the unit do have learning difficulties, and sometimes they need a one-on-one explanation, and then that's different. We do ask you to go through, sometimes we work through Get Smart tutors in terms of looking for tutors that actually know the Bishop system, especially in the maths. Sometimes you don't want to be confused about explaining how things work in maths, and Mike's going to explain that to you. So I think that's just, I hope I've explained the role of the academic support coordinator. It's a coordination role, not a tutoring role. And I think often parents get quite cross with me when I try and re-explain that to them. But I'm happy if you feel that you need me to intervene more on a one-to-one level. I'm really happy. But then send me an email and let's chat about it. I do have a lot of boys that I see, so sometimes getting to see me might be a problem, and you might have to wait 3 weeks to see me, and then that can be problematic. So if I can work in a system with you, the tutor and the boy, then we have got a solid footing to go on. So if you want to ask me anything about it, I know I just see a lot of faces I know from the prep, and I love it. I love seeing you guys when you come over to the college. Please feel free to email me. Pop in at the BSU. You've got a nice coffee machine, so come and have some coffee if you really want to come and chat. But the BSU is there, and feel free to come in and chat. Thanks very much.
Make this a little bit higher. Good evening. Are you guys still awake? Hey, we reached the halfway point, so just another hour to go. I wonder how many of you have maybe an incorrect recognition of your maths class being like that. I'm hoping that's not the case, because sometimes that can be transferred onto the boys, and your experience can maybe lead them down the path of no confidence, no motivation, or just this perception that mathematics is way too difficult. But be under no illusion that at some point during your high school journey with them, they're probably going to be teaching you one or two things. But I'm sure that back-chatting has started already. Maths is one of those subjects where there's a multitude, and I've just put a random 21 down. But mathematics is a core subject for a lot of avenues of tertiary study. But not to say that that's the be-all and end-all. There is different avenues of study, and you're going to hear the subject maths literacy pop up. You're going to hear the subject further maths pop up, and those are all different spectrums of mathematics. But each of them is a viable choice for your son. I think what's most important, and there'll be commonalities, what I have to say, to any subject. Our goal is first and foremost to promote curiosity, promote inquisitiveness, promote stimulation at whatever level they're at. One boy might be getting 100%, but that doesn't mean anything. Your son will be where he is at, and we're there to meet him and to walk alongside him with his journey and the eventual road to success in this subject, but any other subject that's under question. We want to also help the boys recognize where their weakness is, and that will be a path of self-discovery, and Michelle has alluded to that quite well. It's the 21st century. There's a whole bunch of empowering that we need to do, and that is a long journey. It's changing all the time, so grade 10 might look completely different. So walk with us, and criticism is well taken. And if you've got something to offer that you think that we can incorporate, my door's always open. They've got this wealth of information on their laptop. Encourage them to use it. Encourage independents to use it. If there's a problem that they don't understand, my first point of call in my class is, I'm sure there's a YouTube link. Not because I'm lazy, but because that's where they learn the best, actually. Not necessarily in my class, but when they're on their own, figuring out things, and that perseverance is actually the biggest skill in a subject like mathematics. Sticking with it and grappling until you understand it. You're definitely going to get a very sad face at some point. This homework is impossible. These teachers are crazy. I don't know what to do. I give up. I've lost my book. I don't have any homework. That's probably a lie. Mathematics is a subject where you actually have to practice. At some point, it's repetition, but what I would encourage is understanding. If they understand the work, they don't need to practice ad nauseum. And once they understand the core concepts, I think mathematics as a subject is really fun, stimulating, and empowering. But yes, poor organization is definitely going to lead to neglected homework. And then they're just going to be on the back foot. So just try and encourage a constant touch-in with what is going on in class. And Marilyn has also highlighted that that's what math support is. If they're missing a core basic foundation, mass support, clarify it, move on, go to water polo. You're going to see, like I said, forlorn faces. The test was impossible. What were they thinking? And we got to manage that. There will be disappointment, but at some point also there will be a feeling of success that their hard work has paid off and they've got reward for their effort. So keep on encouraging them. It will come. I think it's important to note that there will be a variety of cognitive levels, and this is what you will hear, and it will be exaggerated. The test was just problem solving. We're not allowed to do that. There will be levels, and going from, you can see their knowledge to routine to complex problem solving, and they're fairly moderated. So it will never be a test of just problem solving. I thought this far side picture was good. Mr. Osborne, may I please be excused? My brain is full. I haven't got that yet, but sometimes I get that perception in class. They're going to feel overwhelmed. It's normal, but like I'm reiterating, keep on encouraging, keep on motivating. They can do it. I'm focusing on those two sections, complex and problem solving, because that's probably out of the ordinary. I think maybe prep school is often very, very repetitive, but that sort of repetition is going to fall away, and there is going to be times where their critical thinking needs to be developed and honed. So also that explorative, outside the classroom, inquisitiveness, that's where they're going to hone these skills even more. Problem solving is a different one. I mean, often what, how, what. It's about applying what they've learned. And I think that's probably the biggest useful skill in a real world context, because that's what we're teaching them to do. Problem solve and make lots of money. It is non-routine, it is unfamiliar, it is higher order, and I always say, look here, it might be difficult, but try and make a start, and often that starting point is the most difficult, but thereafter it's probably quite routine. There's two types of assessment. Formative and summative. We do a lot of tests, and often more than we need. So what that allows us to do, and I won't elaborate too much because it'll come across naturally as the year progresses. Let's say for argument's sake, we do 10 tests in a year. Those are all formative tests. It's consolidating one section at a time, but there'll be too many tests. So it allows us to drop some. We can take the best 7. They don't need all those tests. Sometimes they might be absent for a reason. So that's one way that we quite creatively account for those things that will probably happen. They'll have a tour that they need to go to. They can't write the test. We don't allow for rewrites. We don't allow for early writes. We don't allow for late writes. That's the one opportunity that they have. And obviously there's got to be a valid excuse, and then we'll move on from there. But probably the best thing to do if they do miss a test is to go and do it under the normal test conditions and see what they would have gotten, and consolidate that section and make sure that they understand where they would have gone wrong if they had done the test. Summative is the big one because that's everything together. Let me go one ahead. Summative is everything together. That's most likely the examination. That's where you're going to see the wheels come off and the stress and the anxiety just to accumulate to a boiling point where they're probably swearing at you and running away from home. So yes, just tell them to plan well. Tell them to use the systems in place, and they will get through it. I think it's important to note that for any subject, and Michelle said, can be found on our intranet page. Each subject looks remarkably different. It depends on the subject. But everything that you need in terms of assessments for that specific subject, never mind the planner, all on that intranet site. There's a multitude of past years of past papers, past exams, notes, worksheets, useful links to useful websites. There's a lot of information. I've tried to keep the intranet for maths as simple as possible, so it doesn't just exacerbate this problem of too much information and then you procrastinate where to start. So I think it's quite user-friendly. But then at the same time, maths as a whole has sorry, I'm just going to go one forward. Oh, this is Michelle's. Sorry, I think I'm missing a slide. There. So what we also got, you'll see at the top there, is AP Maths, Maths Support, Competition Maths, Maths Society. We're trying to cater for every spectrum of mathematics. Maths Society, probably not necessarily the top students, but anyone that's interested in how maths works and an interesting topic along those lines. The maths support, as mentioned, every day during open period, after school. We take a register, so when it comes to that parent phone call that I might get, and they said, I've been every day, I can just say to you, look, it hasn't happened, we've missed out a lot of time, we need to now put in an emergency plan of action. So just encourage them to use those points of call that is set up to their benefit. AP Maths was one that I mentioned earlier. It's actually been rebranded as Further Maths through the IAB, but that's an extra subject that will cross that bridge when we get there. I imagine there'll be some questions for either one of us, but hopefully that just is a quick summary of what you can expect in terms of the maths, but probably quite common to any subject. So yeah, thank you.
What Michael wasn't saying is that if you have any concerns, you can contact him. He's also very quick on his email. And also just to say, if you could just trust us, it is an adjustment for them. I am a maths teacher. It is an adjustment for them coming to college. So they sometimes struggle to find their feet a little, but they do get there. And we see that in the end when we're thrilled with the results of our boys, not just at the top end, but at the other end as well. I mean, it sounds scary, but a common standard average for the end of grade 12, and we've got very few boys who do maths lit, is, am I right, 77? 78.9. And that's not, so you might say, well, my kid's never going to get that. Well, I'm talking about, we got 156 boys in every grade over time. They're not all handpicked, and many of them are coming from the prep, or they ODs children or whatever. They're not all handpicked, yet our average is consistently that. So what I'm saying to you, our processes we put in place, the many tests they write, the math support, the smaller classes, that kind of thing, does actually pan out in the end, and the boys do very, very nicely across the board, no matter where they start out at. Anyway, I'd like to just finish off because we have used our time. Just to talk a little bit about the way ahead, grade 9 and beyond. Just some things to look forward to for your boys. We have what we call the grade 9 big ideas. Some of you might have heard of this. What happens in grade 9 in the second half of the year, we invite boys to apply. Apply meaning write a motivation to be part of our big ideas program. And basically what we do is we try to teach, they sort of step out of normal academics. They still do English, Afrikaans, maths and science, and one or two others, but they step out of the formal curriculum, and they do end up doing a kind of project-based approach. What it means is they use the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as a content framework in order to help the boys develop 21st century skills. So you might say, oh, my child will not be able to do that because he's not top academic. What I said to you initially is that if you can motivate why you'd like to do the program, that you can do it. So it's for any boy who would like to do that. We will let you know about that next year, but it's something to look forward to for your son. The research pathway is, I did mention that. I said part of managing the deluge of information. We have started what I call a research and referencing pathway. And so my colleagues have developed, I've developed a pathway, meaning that in grade 8, for example, I think it's science and geography, they will have an intervention in terms of assisting them with managing research in a kind of a project-based way. And they'll also be given help with Harvard referencing skills, using Turnitin to focus on plagiarism, on what plagiarism is and what they can't do, and how to take information and synthesize out what they need, how to reference that information, how to know a good source and a bad source. And so when I say a referencing pathway, I've developed a pathway through, but using subjects. So I think in grade 9, they do it in history. In grade 10, they do it in science and allo and history. So I'm determined that no matter what subject path your child takes, by the time they leave in grade 12, they've had a pathway where they've been taught skills in an incremental way. Obviously, we can't teach them everything in grade 8, it would be too much, but the skills of being able to write an essay, an academic essay, and the skills of being able to reference one and be able to present information when they get to tertiary is important. So that's our research pathway, which I think is valuable. In grade 9, there was also subject choice. They will be doing subject choice in August of grade 9. I'll be talking to you again then. And you've heard there's lots of information available about that. In terms of you worrying now about what my child's going to do later, I suggest you don't worry now about that, but what you can worry about or what you can focus on is to make sure that their maths and their science are up to scratch. And I say that maths and science are the only gateway subjects to courses. You don't have to take maths and science, but those are the only ones that are used as prerequisites to entry for some university courses. Some people are mistaken for thinking that you need accounting to do a BCom and you need economics to do a BCom or a business science. You don't. You can do them, but the only subjects which are prerequisites for some courses are maths and science. So you need to make sure they're on top of those. And can I also say English and Afrikaans? I say this because when you apply for a university later on, and I'm talking as a mom now, your points, your subjects that you have, your 7 subjects in matric, 6 of them get used, not LO, 6 of them get used to tally up a point score. And some of those subjects have to be English and Afrikaans. So if you don't get very many marks for English and Afrikaans, you don't get very many points. So to keep that English and Afrikaans going, it's important. Anyway, I'm just mentioning that in passing. And then how can you help? Nearly finished. I'm saying be the parent. I always feel funny saying that because, as I say, we're all parents, we're all doing the best we can. So it's the sleep, it's the cell phone. If your child's like mine, there's not many words coming out of that mouth. So I try to ask questions that cannot be answered with fine or a grunt. And try to make a routine of saying good night. In other words, always make a turn past there, and sometimes there are extra words then. But I suppose the thing is being available for comfort, for comment and comfort, but a step away, and let them learn through experience, good or bad, good and bad, how to navigate their new world. I just want to repeat that again, being available for comment and comfort, but a step away. And to be honest, a lot of the time they'd hold you away, and you never know where you are. And I suppose, I assume you're like, your situation's like mine. And then the other thing you can help with is, I've got this here, sorry. This thing's a bit temperamental, there we go. You'll notice there's another poster here about grit, and I think this is where we can help. So grits being deliberate practice, making them work, perseverance and tenacity, try not let them give up. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go to practice. I was put out the team. Ability to delay gratification, that's very difficult. They get home and they need the food now, immediately. Stick to itness under difficult conditions. That's where us parents can help because we have those situations at home. We don't really have those at school for them. Self-control and self-discipline. Good luck with that. And then consistency of effort, long-term goal-oriented. But these kind of skills which one needs out there, we can help in those everyday situations. And then I love this because I'm a mathematician. That's the Bank of China. And it's made of triangles. So all the pieces of glass, the whole structure is made of triangles, and it's an extremely strong structure. And it's interesting that Marilyn mentioned this. And we mentioned it, Peter Westwood, I think, mentioned it in his chat in the beginning of the year. We like to think of the partnership, the scholar, the parents, and the teacher. I like to look at this and say, have a look where us parents and teachers are. We ground that person. We ground the pupil. So I'm asking you to trust us. This is our core business. Many of us have many years. And so certainly feel free to chat around anything you're uncertain about on any level. They do all make it in the end at different speeds, but they do all get there. And so how do you maintain the strong structure of a triangle? And I use the Bank of China to indicate that triangles are strong. It's actually through the tutor. The tutor sees them every day, at their best and at their worst. They sees them every day, and they will probably be with them for the 5 years. So that's the constant thread. So they're the first ports of call in the chain of communication, but certainly feel free to contact any of the others of us if you actually are concerned and need a friendly face or just a warm voice on the other end of the line. Those are our email addresses. I just want to say one more thing just on today and now, before I ask if there are any questions. You will notice you'll know me because I'm that long name that sends the emails. I'm sorry about that. But we are focusing on the physical classroom now. We're finding that we can be back together. It's most beneficial. To spread our efforts between being online and being in the physical classroom. We do very well online. Our staff have really worked hard at that. But the best benefit is in the physical classroom. So you will notice I sent an email out last week, which is quite definite, about the fact that we are not doing online. But if your child has COVID and they're not well, you'll know there's that whole statement that's out there. If your child has COVID and they're not well, and they're well enough to be at home, well enough to be working, we will go, you let me know, and I will change their status, is what I'll tell you. We actually call it here at Bishop's a blue man. They get made a blue man so that any teacher who goes on the system can see that this child's got a blue man next to them and then knows the teacher must know that they must go online for Teams. Having said that, I also put in that email, if the child's sick, the best bet is for him to be at home and resting. Because it becomes quite frenetic when they're trying to work online and they're too sick to do that. So it's all physical classroom. So if your child's got a sore throat or a nose problem, and they sort of you don't want to send them to school, but they're not that unwell. I'm not going to say let's put them on Teams. I'm saying they need to be in the physical classroom. It's only if they've got COVID and they're not well, cannot be, and they're not well, then we will put them on Teams if they are well enough. The grand scheme of things, we want them well. Okay, then the second part is if they are sick for a test, we do expect you as a parent to email the particular teacher. So if you don't mind, don't all email me for every single test because it becomes too unwieldy. But certainly if it's in my maths class, then you will email me to say so-and-so's sick for the test. And we trust you as parents we find actually the parents are a bit tougher in terms of, making their child go to school to do the test. So if they are not well, if they are well at least. So sick for a test, that's what we expect. But if it's an examination, it will be a doctor's certificate. And we expect that, and I think it's fair enough. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that the assessment they do at school during the course of the year is called school-based assessment. And that counts 60% of the year. And the exams for the year count 40%. So everything they do, the school-based assessment, SBA, is 60% and exams count 40%. I'll just put these random things at the end here because I remember those are questions people asked me last time. I'm going to finish now. You can get hold of any one of us. I hope we've opened the door for you to feel comfortable to do that. Are there any pressing questions now or that anyone would like to ask? Okay, so we'll close the meeting. Don't mob the door. But yeah, I would also want to get out of here quickly. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. It's been lovely to see you. Thank you.